Hi greedy 3Ders, welcome to part 2 of the Ashoka vs Anakin Skywalker battle diorama, and today we did Ashoka. Boy, she was a big job. She was not a 5-minute paint job, as you will see. Done the base as well myself, created it myself. I'll show you how I did all of that, but stay tuned if you want to see part 2 of the 2-part series of Ashoka vs Skywalker. Don't forget to check out part 1. I've printed Ashoka across 2 resin printers using some standard plus resin from Jamghe. I've printed across the Uniformation GK2, and here on my Saturn S you'll see me doing the cape and Ashoka's head. Now that's printed absolutely perfectly. It's quite a complex large print, but everything is printed wonderfully. Slightly lifted off the build plate there, but no dramas. Everything worked. The prints popped off the build plate really easy, and I like to see that. That shows me that my settings are good. And the next thing to do is to take the supports off. Now these can be difficult to get off, but here's a trick. Get a hairdryer on them and just warm them up, and once you've done that just for a couple of minutes, you'll see that the supports literally just fall off the model. And what it also does is it helps those little divots, those little marks that gets left behind by the supports. Now the cloak was quite a big old print with lots of heavy supports on there, and they literally just fell off once I'd heated them up. So that's a little tip from Greedy. Just use a hairdryer on your supports and they'll literally just fall off. And you can still have that nice therapeutic sound of your supports coming off though. Wonderful. And that's the cape, and that's the whole thing done, dusted and printed. Now the 3 colours I'm using to do the skin are red and yellow to make orange, and I've added a bit of a skin tone just to pink it up a very slight amount, and I'm using my airbrush here straight on top of the resin. I haven't done a base layer of primer because I'm going to use these colours as the primer, and I'm giving that coat of Ashoka right the way across, making sure I get right across the face. I don't want to leave any grey or any shadowed areas. On this I want to get everything across, and I'm going to do a lighter coat on the top, so this needs to cover all of the areas of Ashoka's face. And once the face is done, exactly the same on the body to the areas of skin that are exposed. Now using some bleached bone colour and just dropping a couple of drops into that original colour and stirring it well, that's created for me now a lighter orangey pinky skin flesh tone that I'm going to use on Ashoka in a kind of zenithal manner, just from the top down to highlight the outer areas of her face, and the darker areas now will be the orangey colour that's underneath, and that's what she looks like. And I'm pleased with how that effect has come out, and exactly the same on the tops of the arms, again just to add that light effect on there. I'm going to do also some clear coat on the top of that, and that will secure it and seal it and make it safe. Now moving on to the base, while all that's drying, I'm just using some ready mix filler which I got from a local supermarket here, and I'm literally taking a piece of polystyrene and I'm going to splatter it on there to cover that completely. I'm going to cover the top completely with this filler, and I'm going to do all around the edges as well, and that will seal this polystyrene in. It will make it quite stiff and firm, and it will also mean there is my ready-made base, my ready-made diorama base for the 2 characters that I've already test fitted on there to make sure that they will fit on there nicely. And once I've done that, I'm taking some Army Painter brown battlefield sand, any sand effect will do, and I'm just going to literally splatter it right the way across the whole model. Use a gloved hand to push it into the filler, and that is the sand effect done. And once all this has been given time to dry, and make sure you give it plenty of time to dry, we'll move on to the painting of the base section very soon. Now to protect the head when I'm doing the painting, I'm going to be using this Vallejo liquid mask. I love this stuff. Some people don't like it, I absolutely love it, but there is a couple of tricks to using it. The first one is to give it a really good shake. Now I pop it in the lid just a tiny bit so I've got some control and I know where it is, and I paint it on the areas that I want to protect. Now paint it on nice and thick. Do it fairly quickly because the longer you take, the more it dries, and it dries almost transparent, so you can't see exactly where you're putting it. So paint it on really carefully. Just remember, wherever you paint this, no paint will go over it, so make sure you only paint the areas you want to protect. Paint it on nice and thick, get it in all those areas, pop it down to one side to dry when you're finished, and leave it to dry for no more than sort of 15 minutes. I'm doing exactly the same on the other side there to protect the arms of her, and all the areas that were the orangey pinky flesh colours I'm protecting with this Vallejo liquid mask. Now, one of the things with this stuff, the longer you leave it on, the harder it is to get off. If you leave this on for 24 to 48 hours, it's a pain to get off. So the secret is just let it dry, and when you're finished, pour what you don't use back into the pot, give it a wipe before you put it on, because if you don't, it all seals and the lid is a nightmare to get off. Pop it on and then put it away for another day. Now, once you've had 15 minutes pass by, I'm using some just white here to do the rest of Ashoka's head, and there we go, that's the head all done. Straight over the liquid mask, don't worry about it. And for the rest of it, black with some sapphire blue, just to take the edge off the black, and I'm going to paint all of her, the whole lot of her, across with this black.
Some time later.
Now, when the paint has dried, and I just used a hairdryer to help it dry, the liquid mask comes off this easy. So the liquid mask has been on in total now probably about 20 to 25 minutes, no more than that. So it's still just a little bit tacky, it's still sticky, and it comes straight off. As I say, if you leave it for long periods of time, it can be an absolute nightmare to get off. So don't be afraid of liquid mask, just follow those guidelines and you will be absolutely fine. And as you can see, those areas of her face that I wanted to protect are protected beautifully. Now, if there's some edgy bits and there's some bits you can't get at in the corners and the nooks and the crannies, use just a toothpick or maybe a brush or something that's not too hard to just poke it off, because you don't want to be scratching all the paint underneath, because it's still paint under there. So if you use metal, the likelihood is you'll scratch it. So a brush, a very narrow brush, or a toothpick, or a little bit of rubber, or some blue tack, some tack of that nature, you can use also to get it off. But again, just pull it all off, nooks and crannies, get into the edges, get it all off, and the job is done and dusted. That is Vallejo liquid mask used on Ashoka, and I'm absolutely chuffed to bits how she's came out. As you can see, those areas are protected. Wonderful stuff. If you want to get some, there'll be a link in the description where you can get it from, and it'll be an Amazon affiliate link, of course. With a little bit we'll kick back to old greedy 3D. Now, of course, because you've done some more paint work on there, I want to protect the white on her head, so I'm doing a bit of Rust-Oleum clear to protect all of that paint work, and I'm going to do exactly the same across the whole of her body, because after this stage we're going to do a little bit more on the airbrush, but the majority will be paint brushes, and I want to protect that paint so it doesn't come off on my hands. Now, a couple of people have asked me where I do my painting, and I've got a little mobile painting station there, which I did do a review on. If you want to check my videos, I like to link everything into the computer so I can see what I'm seeing on my phone on the screen, and there's all my paints, there's all my brushes. That's how I do my painting. Now, moving on to Ashoka's face, first thing I'm going to do is paint the eyes black. I'm going to do it on her because she's a female character, and I want some of that black to look above and below her eyes to give a kind of eyeliner effect. A really narrow brush, and if you want to get one of these brushes, I'll put a link in the description where you can get the whole set of brushes. Really good value. They were gifted to me, but they're really good. I use them all the time. Leather Brown from Army Painter is what we're using for Ahsoka's head piece, and I'm just going to use a really narrow brush to go around the edge where it joins her hair. I'm sure there's a name for those things, and where it joins her face as well. And then once I've done that, I'm going to fill in all the gaps. That's layer one. It's going to have a couple of layers of this brown headgear paint of Leather Brown, but for now the first layer is on. The black of the eyes is drying lovely. It's all coming together marvellously. For the lips, I'm just using a little bit of pink mixed with a little bit of red. She does wear some lippy in Ahsoka on the TV, so I want to make her look a little bit glamorous. She certainly does have her red lipstick on in the series, and that's what I want her to look like in reality here. Well, resin printed reality anyway. Now, some ivory for the whites of her eyes, and again a really narrow brush to put a little bit of paint on the brush and work your way in there to keep the outer layer of black around the top and the bottom of the eyes to give that eyeliner effect. Takes a little bit of practice, a little bit of care, but once you've done it, once you've got it right, it looks fantastic. It's a real easy way of doing eyes. It's not the only thing we're doing to the eyes, but it's definitely step numero uno. And there we go. You can see already what it looks like with the eyeliner above and below and the little bit of rouge around her face. Oh, looks lovely, doesn't it? Now then, to do those bits on her face, the white markings, oh my god, this took forever. Take your time on this, narrow brush, white paint, add a little bit of thinner to the paint so it rolls and moves a little better, but oh my, you need to do this carefully. This will take you some time, but the end result will be worth it.
Some time later.
Oh, sometime later indeed. I lost track of how long it took. That's had a couple of layers across it now, and to be fair, I didn't make any mistakes. I didn't go over my skin tone. It all worked wonderfully. So now for the dark pupils of her eyes. Now she's got some nice blue eyes, so we're going to do a base layer of black to start with. Just little semicircles looking forward. Make sure you see where you're going to put her on a model and make sure she looks to where you want her to look. And in this case, looking forward is exactly what we're after. And there is the black on, and I'm using some Void Shield blue for the blues of her eyes. Her eyes are quite strikingly blue, so again, narrow brush, and I'm just going to pop it in there, just dabbing it around to get that all in the centre of the black, so there's just a little layer of that black popping from the outside of the blue. Whew, the pupils have gone in, the eyes are done. Oh, she is done and dusted. She's looking really, really nice. Just 2 dots for the pupils is all I've done additionally, and a little bit of red under her eye and a little bit of pink around the corners. Now for her hair, hat, and oh, I don't know what they are, but for whatever they are, and I'm sure somebody will tell me in the description and the comments, I'm going to use some ultramarine blue, just watered down and added to a little bit of thinner and a little bit of white, and I'm going to paint these. Again, this was a long job, but well worth it. Now Ashoka is not a 5-minute paint job. She's going to take you a long time to do, but all will be worth it in the end. I've given it a couple of layers in the end, but I'm going to do a bit more work on it in the end stages.
2,000 years later.
Oh, there we go. There's the first layer on. You can see it's a bit patchy, it's a bit shady, so we do need to give it another coat. But the first layer's on. I'm happy with the first layer. I'm happy with the way she's looking. I'm happy with the colour, which we're going to tone down in a little bit. Second layer is now on, and as you can see, everything has evened up a little bit. We've covered some of the white patches that needed covering where the blue had spilt across, and she's looking a lot more even. Still another couple of bits to cover up, but the majority is done. Now taking a white dry brush, so white paint on a dry brush, and I am going to tone down these blue marks on her headgear. I don't want them to look striking. If you look at her in the actual TV series, they don't look like they stand out that much. There's a little bit of shading and a little bit of merging into the white, so that's exactly what I'm doing with the dry brush here. And I've got to be honest, I'm really pleased how this came out. It's one of those things when you're doing these models, you're not quite sure how it's going to look until you do it, but you know, I thought about let's try it, and it worked perfectly. So white dry brush across your blue to merge all the blues and the whites in together a little more. Well, you can notice there as well, I've put the diamond and the triangle in silver just on her headgear, and once all that's on now, that's the head done. The only thing I did as well was I added a little bit of gloss on the eyes and the lips, and I'm going to call her head done and dusted. Now, moving on to the rest of her body, if it's a Martian Brown for the belt, I just want the belt to stick out a little bit. I don't want it to be completely brown. I'm going to use almost a dry brush technique around the belt just to make it look a little bit more of a centerpiece, so that it splits the top and the bottom of Ashoka over. So in the center between the little ring there and around the belt, having some brown on it. And once that's done, that's what it looks like. You see what I mean? It just separates the top and the bottom nicely, and it didn't take too long to do that. We're going to take some silver next, and I'm going to paint the buckle around her belt and the little dots and rivets on there as well. And it's got like some dangly bits as well that need some little silver braids on them, so I'm going to paint those on them too while the silver paint is out. And that's what the belt looks like with the little braidy bits and the buckle done. And and I'm going to dry brush now on her arm pieces. She's got like some gauntlets which look like they're made of metal, so getting a nice big dry brush, I'm going to dry brush the silver across those. And also down the little dangly thing off her belt there. I'm not quite sure what that is, but I just thought it's going to look good with a little bit of dry brushing across it. Same again to the metal plates down on her shins, just her shin protectors there. Perhaps she plays footy, I'm not sure, but we're going to give those a little bit of a blasting across in that metallic-y look. And again, using that Martian Brown, just going to paint some straps around underneath the gauntlets, again just to give it a little interest to look at. Using a skin colour that I've remixed on the wet palette, I'm just going to paint in the little bits of her arms that you can see. Don't worry if you go over the black with this, you can go back over the black again as long as you get it in there and you can see it. That brown as well on a dry brush now is just going to make her shoes look a little bit of a different colour to the rest of her. Again, I'm just making her stand out just a little bit with a few extra colours here and there. Now for the cape, which you saw me printing earlier, I'm just going to paint that black, dry it, paint it black, dry it, paint it black, put a couple of layers on it, and then once I've got that all done and dried, I'm going to glue it on to Ashoka. And I've done this at the end because I didn't want it to get in the way while I painted the rest of her, so I've used some super glue and some activator, and now to join the gap in between the two bits, I'm using some precision bottle magic with a bit of resin in there, and I'm using a natural sunlight, as you can see there. We're in the UK, we don't get it often, to just cure that resin. I've also used a little torch as well just to give it a final touches, and once it's in, sand it down lightly with a bit of sandpaper, give it another spray with paint, and move back to the wet palette, and I am going to just dry brush some silver across the cape just to make it stand out a little bit. We are on the final touches now. We're on the home straight of Ashoka. We're nearly there, so that's the cape done. The lightsabers, I've given them a coat of white and a very, very light blue, silver to the gauntlety bits, and her hands are orangey colour, and that's her all done. Hope you enjoy the final reveal. Well, as you can see, that was not a 5-minute build, but Ashoka looks absolutely fantastic. Now, when you watch this video, I'm sure someone somewhere has put out a custom-made Ashoka vs Skywalker, and it'll all be bells and all be whistles, but this is my version, and I'm really pleased with it. And it was easy to make. The base was easy. The two characters just merged together lovely. Wonderful. Can I just take a moment to say thank you to my Patreons? Thank you guys for your support. If you want to join the Patreon scheme, you would be more than welcome. The details will be in the description. Please join the greedy 3D fold. If you want to support the channel in other ways, you can. Just buy from the description, and anything you buy from there, a little bit will kick back to the channel as an Amazon affiliate link. Big thank you to Jamghe for sponsoring today's video and giving me their resin. Thank you, Jamghe. If you want to buy some Jamghe resin, which is fantastic, and I'm not just saying that, it is fantastic, the link will be in the description too. And I will see you next time real soon for God knows what we're going to do next time, but let's think of something. We're going to 3D print, we're going to paint, and we're going to make it look amazing. Hopefully. Don't forget to leave a comment. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to share. I want to hear what you think about my diorama. See you next time on Greedy 3D.